What's the real difference between paramedics who stay calm under pressure and those who panic when everything goes wrong? And why do 30% of emergency department intubations come with complications?
Hear you on 8. You on 8. Okay, you're clear. Stand by for your base.
Welcome to Loud and Clear EMS Guiding Principles. I'm your host, Ross Orpet, and today we're exploring a tool that could transform your clinical practice in ways you may not expect. This episode was recorded on site at Fast 25, where we sat down with someone who's been quietly revolutionizing how EMS providers approach education and high-stakes patient care. But here's what caught my attention. We're not talking about fancy new equipment or cutting-edge medications. We're talking about something so simple that most providers dismiss it as unnecessary bureaucracy. What if the secret to better patient outcomes and less provider stress was simple and hiding in plain sight? Well, it is. Our guest is Geoff Murphy, founder of Master Medics and one of the most thoughtful voices in EMS education. His lecture at Fast 25 was about how we can use this one simple tool to increase provider proficiency and consistency and improve patient outcomes. But this conversation goes way beyond typical training approaches. We're diving into the psychology of why experienced providers sometimes freeze up, how consistency creates confidence, and why slowing down actually makes you faster. Now, for anyone interested in deliberately cultivating confidence and consistency in your own practice, we've actually started a program specifically designed to help newer paramedics develop exactly these qualities. We're calling this the Paramedic Confidence Builder. I am so excited because the program is officially kicking off this week. And while enrollment is now closed for the founding members cohort, we'll be opening it back up in October. So if you want to apply for the waitlist when we reopen in October, email me at ross@emspodcast.com. And speaking of elevating EMS education, Geoff and Master Your Medics is partnering with FlightBridge Ed to bring the inaugural Fast Can conference to Calgary, Alberta this year. This will be next month, September 3rd and 4th, and the tickets are available now at masteryourmedics.com. Will and I will actually be there interviewing speakers after their lectures. So if you're there, please come say hi. Lastly, before we dive in, I need to tell you guys about someone else who is trying to improve patient outcomes through simplicity, the Resuscitator. The Resuscitator designs custom EMS bags to work for you so that they increase efficiency, decrease waste, and improve patient outcomes. If you're tired of a bag that wasn't designed with your mission and specific equipment in mind, and you want to find simple ways to improve care in your system, reach out to the Resuscitator at resuscitator.com to learn more. Now let's explore how a simple piece of paper might be the key to unlocking your full potential as a provider. Because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about training, consistency, and performance under pressure. Geoff Murphy, thanks so much for coming back on the show. We had the pleasure of chatting with you at Fast 24 last year, and we're here on site again at Fast 25 and just listened to you give another phenomenal lecture as you do. Really excited to chat with you about this one. So welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
As a reminder to our listeners who don't know, you are the founder of Master Your Medics, which is an online education platform for EMTs, paramedics, based out of Canada. But I know a ton of people in the States utilizing your guys' services as well, and you guys do some good work. So
Thanks. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So today you talked a little bit about the importance of checklists. And you started out your talk with this graph of kind of confidence and knowledge. Talk me through that graph.
It's an interesting graph, and it's essentially a play on the Dunning-Kruger. And in my mind, when it comes to the Dunning-Kruger, it's not about, confidence as a global thing. It's a confidence in specific avenues. So the one that I was talking about today was airway and failing at airway. And so that was one of those things where it's just, I had confidence that I was good at airway, and then all of a sudden I had this sudden drop of I'm not good enough to do airway stuff. And I think that you can have that graph or that Dunning-Kruger idea in several different aspects. It's not just an overarching, I'm good at being a paramedic and I'm not good at being a paramedic. I'm good at one thing or I'm not kind of idea. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing where it's not really supposed to be a global thing. It's supposed to be a skill thing or a knowledge thing.
Yeah, can definitely be different for every area of your
Yeah,
practice.
exactly. So that was where that came from, and it's a real feeling to feel that when you fail at something and then you start thinking about it. It's like you can really feel yourself go from, holy crap, I'm not as good as what I thought I was.
One of the things that I really liked in your talk was this idea of consistency. So expand for us on that. Why is consistency important?
When it comes to your brain and what we're doing, especially with high-risk procedures like intubation, if you know what the next thing you're going to do is, if let's say the alarms go off or your partner says something or something happens to the patient that's unexpected, if you have a consistent way of training and using a checklist, you're much less likely to panic and switch gears or hyper focus on one thing that maybe doesn't matter at that very moment. That consistency can be really valuable in making sure that you don't get sidetracked into something that really doesn't need your attention at that moment. And if you train that way, and if you train in a consistent way, you're a lot less likely to allow yourself to be pulled in that direction.
How do we train that consistency into us? How do we engineer that in our practice?
Coming back to the checklist and what I was introducing is that instead of just using it with patients, it should be used in training as well. Traditionally in training, as a clinical educator, we create scenarios and then we tend to not tell the person that we're going to train that particular scenario, like an airway scenario or something. And then we bring these paramedics in and say, okay, this is the patient that you get, as opposed to letting them know earlier on, be like, this is the type of patient you're getting. I want you to prepare for this type of patient. And just switching the mindset of surprising people and allowing for us to train and prepare in a specific way for a specific type of patient. And I think that's a big part of it, is that it shouldn't be just with patients. It should be a training regimen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You practice that. And even though each patient is a little different, we're getting sent curveballs throughout the care. And, there's still an underlying theme. And that is kind of where your checklist brings you back to, is like, okay, this is my comfort zone. This is my underlying theme. I know I can run through this and I can deal with curveballs as they go, and it makes that a lot more manageable.
For sure. And even some of the best paramedics, and that's where that checklist came from, is that just looking at these paramedics that have dozens and dozens of years of experience. And I'm trying to figure out, as a young paramedic, how the hell do they not get freaked out, or they don't, feel that pressure and just crumble under it. And I couldn't figure that out. And eventually what I figured out is that they just have this ability to maintain themselves and compose themselves. And I think that comes from, they know what they're going to do next. Whether they trained with a checklist or not, if you don't have the experience to have that type of demeanor, a checklist can create that for you, because you can build that and train that into, what you're going to do next, like they do.
It's kind of having this basis of fundamentals where you can fall back on those fundamentals. Things may go awry, things may surprise you, but if you have this understanding of the fundamentals, you're moving in a consistent direction. Even if you may take a right turn, you're still working to end up back where you want to be, sort of thing.
Exactly. And especially if you're checklisting, and it's if you check something off and then you go back and be like, oh man, deal with this. And then you kind of go, oh, where was I? And then you center yourself okay, I was here. And then I can start exactly what the point that I need to start at.
Yeah,
right?
It's almost like a physical, practical mantra. We talk about having this saying that grounds you back in the call, and the checklist almost acts as that practical measure of doing that. It centers you back to the call while also helping to move you forward in the call.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. You talked about this airway checklist and some of the data that you brought out and why different things we do in airway is important, why different things on the checklist are so important. So I'd love to highlight the study you talked about.
The pre-oxy trial was really interesting, and it was very highly talked about when it first came out. There were several podcasts that were talking about it, and it was quoted as game-changing. And I think that it absolutely can be game-changing for a lot of people that have access to the equipment that you need in order to do it properly. And that's probably the only downfall of it, is that with pre-oxy trial, what it was training on is that it wasn't just non-invasive ventilation. It was BiPAP specifically that was able to allow for ventilations to occur during the apneic phases. And that's not something that CPAP can do. It's not something that just oxygen-driven BiPAP is able to do. It needs the ability to drive that pressure. So as far as the study goes, it's pretty fantastic if you have the tools, and seeing that if we're using BiPAP effectively, we can reduce the incidence of hypoxia in half. And that's a big deal. Even with some of the biggest groundbreaking studies that we see come out of medicine, be able to cut something in half, a negative thing in half, that doesn't happen. With this one, we were finally able to see something that really had a big impact, which was great to see.
Yeah. So that pre-oxy trial showed that if we utilize BiPAP for our pre-oxygenation, even during that apnea period, we can cut the apneic episodes or the hypoxic episodes in half, which is amazing. And I think a lot of us, our first reactions are, well, I don't have time for that. This is an emergency. I'm a paramedic. I work, in emergency settings. I need to act quickly. But I think that people will say a similar thing about checklists too. And when in reality, it goes back to that saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And sometimes we actually need to slow down in order to work better, more effectively, and more efficiently too.
Mm-hmm. That was the story that I brought up in the beginning. I didn't use a checklist. I kind of just rushed it. And the result was pretty significant hypoxia, and not just a mild amount, like a significant amount for, I can't even tell you how long it was, because my heart was going so fast, and the thought process was just like, get the tube. And there was no preparation involved in that. And I think the result was negative compared to what it could be if I actually did exactly what you're saying. I think that was a big thing that I learned early on. And I think that's a message for a lot of young paramedics, that if you don't have the experience yet, then you should be falling back on these checklists more often, because you don't know how you're going to react in those situations yet. But using a checklist can center yourself and keep you from going off the rails.
Yeah. And I think, just like you said, the checklists are a great jumping off point for training too. Like if you're looking to train, if you're looking to mentally simulate something, and you have access to a checklist, or go up and look online for a checklist, those are a great way to practice in your mind's eye going through that intubation, because it's going to take you step by step, just like it's supposed to.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And even with my guys, I'm probably one of the younger paramedics that are at my flight position, and reminding those guys that have decades of experience above me and helping them train with checklists, I think actually grounds them as well. Those guys are like, oh, I don't want to do another training thing. Well, this is different. And it gets you involved in it, as opposed to just listening to someone talk for a while. And so even the educators that are out there, I'm thinking, I don't really want to introduce something new again in fear that it's not going to be well received. In my experience with even some of the guys that usually don't like education, they tend to receive this really well, because they're not just sitting there listening to someone talk to them. They're actually getting involved and seeing a goal at the end, which I think is a really big thing for them.
And I think they can take it and continue to be involved and work with it on their own, after that training, which was just huge.
Yeah.
In talking about some of the importance of the checklist, you highlighted a study that talked about the adverse events that happen with emergency department intubations.
So 30% of intubations come with a complication. And that shouldn't be surprising when you think about all the things that can go wrong with
and
intubation.
The setting we're working in.
Yeah. Especially when we're making decisions on unstable patients a lot of the time. And in EMS, I would not be surprised if that study said that it was more in the 40 to 50% complication rate, maybe even higher, based on how fast we're trying to work in that environment. I think that those complications come from sometimes not being proactive. And I think that's where that checklist came into be, is how do we protect ourselves from problems happening? How do we protect ourselves from our house catching fire? Is that we proactively protect our house by doing certain things to keep it from causing damage. And that's how I look at it, from how do we build a checklist that's going to be proactive and limit those complications from occurring.
Yeah, I love that. And, my initial thought when I see a study like that is, well, we work in the emergency department. These patients aren't getting intubated because they're going in for an elective surgery, right? These are sick patients. That's the reason they're getting a tube. Maybe this is just unavoidable because of the setting we work in. But in reality, just like you said, you can look at like, what are the most common causes? It's a great paper to look at like, what is happening? What are the most common causes? And then use that as a jumping off point to like, we're not going to be able to prevent all of these, but we can prevent some of them as long as we look at and address what the most common things are.
Exactly. And that's how you can look at any type of complication that occurs. And it doesn't have to be just intubation. Like if you're building a checklist or you're trying to think about how to move forward with that, is just, okay, look at what the complication rates are and be like, okay, ask the question why. Because if you ask the question why and you can answer it, then you can build a checklist to protect against those problems. And that doesn't have to be just airway. It can be any complication.
Yeah. Are there other procedures that you love checklists for?
I think that cardiac arrest is a good one. One that I think that is undervalued or underused is a ROSC checklist, return of spontaneous circulation. I think that we're getting really good at the cardiac arrest aspect of paramedicine and pre-hospital medicine. We're good at that part and good at, doing good teamwork in those situations. But it's kind of funny is that now that we're getting good at that, we're getting ROSC more often and we go, okay, what now? Right? So I think that that's something that can be really valuable, is that there's a lot of moving parts in a patient that has a return of spontaneous circulation. A checklist can get you out of the mode of, okay, we're not in cardiac arrest anymore. What's next? And so using a checklist can help you move towards what the next goal is, which is to prevent another arrest. And there's a lot of things that you need to think about, and it's better if you have something in front of you telling you what to do.
Totally. And it can help slow you down and prevent you from this urge of like, got a pulse, let's move. Because then you're just taking an incredibly unstable patient who was not alive a second ago and putting him in the back of a moving ambulance before you've done anything to try to stabilize them and prevent them from rearresting en route.
Exactly.
So that can definitely help you slow down. One other that I would argue would be a great area for a checklist is the post-sedation management, especially recently we've highlighted a lot of the dangers that occur from sedative medications or can occur. And now they are absolutely a tool that is meant to keep you as a provider and your patient safe and the community safe. But at the same time, once we've accomplished that effective sedation, that's a high risk moment that we need to take steps to make sure that we're monitoring the patient and protecting them from any adverse outcomes.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it, is that you kind of have to sit down and be like, okay, what are the most dangerous moments that we have in our job? And if it comes up in that conversation, there's probably a good grounds to have some sort of checklist to fight against it.
Yeah.
Dope is another one, dope mnemonic, and using that as a checklist. When everything's failing, you figure out why, and you can go through a checklist in order to determine that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, my vent tubing came out and I didn't notice it kind of idea. Like those are all things that can be caught if you allow yourself to be centered with something tangible in front of you to check everything.
Absolutely.
Or attention pneumothorax, or even for that, right? It's like, oh, I didn't notice that they had, narrowing pulse pressures or whatever the case may be, right? And those can be things that you would probably not think about on your own if you were new, but if you had something in front of you to remind you, you probably could save that patient's life by just looking at a piece of paper and be like, okay, what do I need to look for?
Yeah, that's great. Phenomenal. Thank you again. Looks like it's snack time here at Fast 25, so we'll go get some food. Tell our listeners where they can find you. And I just heard you guys got a conference going on here soon in Canada, so tell us about that too.
We do. So we partnered with Flightbridge. I mean, I've been speaking at Flightbridge for the last almost 5 years. And I finally went to Eric and I said, you know what, I would love to bring this to Canada and bring this experience to Canadian paramedics who are extremely passionate about paramedicine. And they need something like this. So Eric was, willing to help and put that together. And so we partnered on it, and now it's finally becoming a reality. And it's going to be this September 2025 in Calgary, Alberta. And we're looking forward to seeing everyone and putting on a show.
That's awesome. Where can people go to buy tickets for that?
They can go to our website, mastermedics.com, and you can look right at the top bar. You'll see Fast Canada, and you can click there, register right now today.
That's awesome. First of many, I hope.
I hope so.
What a conversation with Geoff Murphy. Let's recap some of the key guiding principles to help transform your practice. First, the Dunning-Kruger effect. It isn't just about overall performance or confidence. It's about specific skills at different times. You may be rock solid on cardiac arrest, but still learning when it comes to airway management. Understanding this helps you stay humble and keep improving in targeted areas. Second, consistency is everything. The paramedics who stay calm, under pressure, they're not superhuman. They know what comes next because they've trained the same way every time. Checklists help you do that. These aren't just bureaucracy. They're your mental anchor when everything else is falling apart. These tools can catch the complications that slip by when you're focused on the immediate crisis. The thread connecting all of this, building systems that support you when your brain is maxed out. For supplemental materials from this episode and all our previous episodes, head over to emspodcast.com. And while you're at it, make sure to help us be able to continue to bring you high-level education. You can help us by subscribing, leaving us a review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram for behind-the-scenes content and quick tips. Thanks for listening to Loud and Clear EMS Guiding Principles. Until next time, stay safe out there and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in EMS.